Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ross Simons. I'm a product research analyst at General Motors. And what my role really is to work closely with engineers and designers as they develop our vehicles. So as the vehicle moves through the product development lifecycle, it passes through various gates, and at each one of those gates, my group is conducting research, mostly in the form of quantitative feedback on what customers want in terms of design characteristics or features or driving performance. But we also usually supplement that with some qualitative. But earlier in that process, when we're just trying to figure out what direction we're trying to go in, most of our research is purely qualitative. And I'm going to talk about one of those methodologies that we use early in our development process today. So before I get into that, I do want to give you just a brief high-level background of what the automotive industry is like, kind of what the general way of thinking is and how we initially view our customers. Then I'm going to kind of talk about the role that the market research department at GM plays in terms of adding context to our engineers' initial ideas of who our customers are. And then I'll actually walk us through a real case study to highlight how we went about learning about the SUV customer. And at the end, I'll talk about how we get buy-in from various areas in the company that aren't necessarily research or qualitative research accepting. And a lot of this is, very similar to what we heard yesterday from AOL and from Capital One. A lot of similarities there, which I think really validates, our method here. But hopefully, in the context of a large durable good, maybe you guys can pull some new insights or some new learnings from this presentation. So to start off with, the automotive industry, by its nature, is just very left-brained. It's a very engineering-heavy product, so it attracts a lot of those engineering-type thinkers who love data, they love numbers, and they need as much information as possible before making their decisions, which is a great thing for us. Because in the automotive industry, there's no such thing as an easy decision. A lot of these questions that we have are often hundreds of millions of dollars, or sometimes upwards of $1 billion that people are trying to decide how to spend. Our most recent product that we released, the Cadillac CT6, just the platform alone on that product was a $1 billion investment. So we really have no room for error, and there's definitely less room for this kind of fail fast and try again type attitude. The other issue that we have in the automotive industry is that our products take a very long time to develop. Usually development time is between 5 and 7 years, and the life cycle of our products are, again, 5 to 7 years. So if we come to market with a product that doesn't do well, we don't really have a whole lot of room to make adjustments. There are some things that we can do as far as materials and some small upgrades, but if we come to market with a bad product, we're stuck with that product for several years. So as a result of this, we have a lot of people who, like I said, the engineering mindset, love data. They love that hard, concrete evidence, but they're not so accepting of the soft, fuzzy stuff. They're a little uncomfortable in that realm. But in some areas, we can't always collect quantitative data on every single moving part of the vehicle. They have to have some sort of base or foundation to draw from in some decisions that we just can't possibly feel study in time to accommodate. So since we use so much quantitative data, we have a lot of national sources that we pull from. We have a lot of national syndicated surveys like J.D. Power and Associates. We also have our own internal tracking studies and all kinds of different quantitative sources that we can pull from. And those are usually the first step in trying to guess who our customer is. But like Ben said yesterday, there's really there's a huge difference between who we think our customer is and the realm of like where we work and what we think the world of automotive is and what it actually is. In Detroit, in our headquarters, that's where our product is made, but that's not necessarily reflective of how the entire country uses their vehicles, and we need to get out of the Midwest sometimes and see our vehicles in action to really understand why people are motivated to buy the car that they do. These quantitative resources that we have are great for telling us what people are doing, what they're buying, what the demographics are, but they're not really diving deep into the motivations behind that, and that's what we really need to understand when we're trying to improve our vehicles. So with some of our quantitative information, we can make assumptions of who these people are, but we really don't want to take the risk of just going off of assumptions. And I'm going to highlight that with this example right here. I figured since this is Washington, D.C., and it's an election year, I wanted to use an election as an example to show why you can't just make decisions off of shallow observations of people. So let's say it's time to elect a new world leader. And there's 3 leading candidates. Candidate A associates with crooked politicians, and he also consults with astrologers. He's had 2 mistresses, and he's also a chain smoker and drinks 8 to 10 martinis a day. I think this year he'd probably be a pretty popular candidate, but candidate B, he was kicked out of office twice, sleeps until noon, uses opium, and drinks a quart of whiskey every evening. And then candidate C, is a decorated war hero, a vegetarian, doesn't smoke, just a occasional social drinker, and has never had any extramarital affairs. So based off of these observations, let's just take a vote. Who would vote for candidate A? How about candidate B? No? Well, surprising. Candidate C, anyone? Okay. Well, candidate A was FDR. Candidate B was Winston Churchill. And candidate C was Adolf Hitler. So this goes to show that these high-level, just quick observations of people aren't enough to really know who these people are and what motivates them. You really need to spend time with people and see them, in their real life to get a feel for what their goals are, what their values are, and how you can win them over. So let's just take the example of the SUV buyer. We could take a look at our internal sources or our syndicated studies and basically just look at numbers. And in that sense, these people are just numbers to us. We could take a look at the fact that 69% of SUV buyers are married, the average age is 45. We could see how many are college graduates. We could take a look at the household income. We could see that 2/3 of respondents say that they regularly carry passengers in the back seat. And also the top reasons for purchase are listed as safety, vehicle size, cargo capacity, and ride comfort. So just taking all this into account, we can start to make some assumptions or get some sort of idea of who we think these people are. So most likely, we might assume that they're families with younger children, based on the household income, probably dual income household. Everyone's busy, and the SUV itself is just a tool to get the kids from soccer practice to school to daycare, whatever. That typical SUV, soccer mom type of stereotype that we have. And then based on the need for safety, we could assume that just having more safety features in our vehicle, like side blind zone alert, cross traffic alert, and things like that would be the key to winning over these customers. So making those assumptions, we start to develop this kind of hazy, but still somewhat viewable image of who we think our customer is. We can kind of see them in our minds, but even then, we're not entirely sure if this assumption is correct. And the only way we can tell this assumption is correct is actually by getting out of Detroit and going out in the real world and seeing our customers use their vehicles every day. So this is where our target customer immersion methodology comes in. I said before that our development process of our products is very long, anywhere between 5 and 7 years. And throughout the entire process, we're constantly doing various combinations of quant and qual research. But the very beginning of this process is our TCI study, which is a bit of an ethnographic study where we try to understand our customers' lifestyles, their goals, their values, what motivates them to purchase a vehicle that they did. And then this followed up with with quant studies that will verify some of the findings that we did. Maybe we get inspired sometimes in these TCI studies too to come up with new features or new changes to our products that we want to get some feedback on. So we'll explore that further as a result of these. And when I call this a methodology, I mean that really loosely. It's really not a methodology as much as it is a toolbox. So when we're dealing with all of our different segments, we're not going to use the same set of tools to study a heavy-duty pickup truck buyer versus a Corvette buyer. They're just motivated by completely different reasonings. But no matter what segment we're looking at, there's always some consistencies. So this type of research is always qualitative, usually having some form of like a focus group or triad involved. It's immersive, so like Capital One and AOL yesterday, we bring our stakeholders and our decision makers into the process, and we kind of make them market research themselves. And we focus on lifestyles, values, and the role of the vehicle. We can do this in a couple different ways. Sometimes we'll send out journals, whether in the form of diaries or cameras ahead of time before the focus groups for people to fill out. We'll do discussion groups on site where people can evaluate production vehicles that we have there, or concept boards, or other stimuli we might have. We can do in-home interviews, personal intercepts. Sometimes we've gone to campsites to see how people are using their trucks to trailer things, or we've gone to hardware stores, or we've gone to schools to watch parents dropping their kids off, and we learn some things just from observing them, or even intercepting them and talking to them. And we also do ride-alongs. And the keys to the success of this type of project is to have active team involvement. Since we don't have these hard numbers to back up our findings, we really need the people that we're presenting this information to experience it firsthand, and that's really what's going to allow them to retain it and take it a little bit more seriously. So in the case of the SUV buyer, we had our stereotypes going into this study, and we wanted to know how accurate that was. So our research questions, we want to know why people choose to buy an SUV. Was it really just to transport the kids around to soccer practice or to school or whatever, or was there some other reason? What role did brand play? How did they judge craftsmanship? They're saying that they're carrying people in the back seat. We think that they're kids. Is it really? We're not really sure. And what kind of drive dynamics do they want the car to have? How do they want it to handle? How do they want it to accelerate? Things of that nature. And to get at this, we used 3 of our tools from our toolbox. Customer journals, which were sent out a week or 2 before the focus groups, and that gives us some information just to review later on, but the main benefit of that is to just get people thinking and become self-aware of some of the things that they're doing, so when they come into our focus groups, they're more prepared to have these discussions. We also have them go through some metaphor exercises and things like that. We did focus groups on site at a central location where we had people evaluate production vehicles that represented their own vehicle, as well as some they may have cross-shopped, and some different feature boards and things like that we were thinking of. And then from there, the focus group is a great resource to understand, what findings are just unique to one person and what are consistent across multiple people. But it's also a great screener to understand who would be a good person to use in-home interviews with. We could try going in blind, but to be honest, it's hard enough to get our designers and engineers away from the office that we need to make sure that when we're going into people's homes that they're interesting, well-articulate, and relevant respondents that we're observing in a deeper context. So what did we learn? Well, if we just spent a little bit more time diving into the numbers beforehand, we find that over half of respondents, or over half of owners of SUVs don't even have kids. So right there, our notion that all these people are soccer moms is just blown out of the water. So who are they really? Well, a chunk of them really are the young families that we had in our heads, but a good portion of them are just people who are youthful and active and have these really outgoing, outdoorsy type of hobbies, biking, skiing, all kinds of different sports, and they just need a utility vehicle to help accommodate those hobbies. But a bigger portion of them are just empty nesters. They may buy an SUV just on the off chance that they might need it when the grandkids come visit, or they just need another vehicle to, transport larger objects or something like that. I'm going to go into that a little bit more here. So when we actually go into people's homes, we're able to observe, different scenarios that you really can't capture in a questionnaire. It mostly be write-ins, and it would take forever to kind of comb through and figure out some of this stuff. But we can see, some of these active and youthful people who are using their vehicles for these sporting hobbies. You can see this person up here uses it for skiing, and another instance that this vehicle is being used is a little different than what we assumed would be as a work vehicle. So maybe a real estate agent is using it to transport clients from house to house, or they're running a small business and they need a larger vehicle to transport goods from location to location. Or like I mentioned before, the empty nesters having to move a lawnmower or some large item, and they just want that independence, and they want a vehicle in their household fleet that can give them that independence. Also, our idea of who's actually riding the back seat is challenged. So we think it's kids. Well, only 23% of SUV owners actually report regularly transporting kids in the back seat. Can anyone guess what percentage actually transport their dogs? Actually 46%. So twice as many people are using these vehicles as dog transporters than they are as like kids transporters. And when you talk to people in these focus groups, they're actually calling their dogs their kids, which is kind of funny. The dog really is a member of the household and is part of their family. And then when we do these ride-alongs with people, we get a better sense of what they mean in terms of things like safety or reliability. So how should these SUVs drive? Well, they should be very predictable. The amount of effort that you put into steering should be lined up directly with exactly how much it steers. The same thing with the acceleration. They don't want any unexpected bursts or anything like that. They want it directly proportional with how much effort they put in. Actually, I'll go back for a second. I do want to point out, too, a couple of examples here where we often have these side discussions or these special issues that we call them. And in some of these observations, we're able to get more insight into how to solve some of these special issues. So in the case of the skis, one of our debates might be, how should the rear seats fold down? You think that's just a trivial question, but there's huge cost implications between having a seat that folds 50-50 or 40% and 60% or 40-20-40. And by seeing how people arrange stuff in their cargo areas, we can kind of see which combination would best accommodate the most people. Or a better example of how we think we're making improvements to our vehicle, but it turns out we're making a huge mistake would be in the case of the dogs. So before we understood that these were dog-carrying vehicles, we had heard customer requests for having a flat load floor. When we put our second row seats down, there's a big bump, basically, so you can't necessarily easily load a lot of stuff. So we thought, okay, easy thing, just make the load floor flat. Instead of lowering the seats to make that happen, we actually raised the cargo floor up about 4 inches. And from doing some of these in-homes, we're able to see just by raising it up that 4 inches, you can no longer fit a dog kennel in the back. So a main reason for purchase became, one of the things that people actually disliked about their new vehicles, and that was a huge mistake to make that change to our product. So I'm just going to review the journey that we've gone on so far. So we started off with just some base quantitative information. From that, we made some assumptions that these people are basically just suburban soccer parents. But we were able to find out that actually the SUV owner can be a wide variety of different people. It could be anyone from those small families to these empty nesters and everything in between. It's not just a kids transporter. It can transport dogs and full-size adults. We need to keep in mind everyone when we're actually designing these rear seats. And in terms of safety, it turns out the safety isn't just it's not really a technology feature that people are thinking about. It's more to do with the visibility of the vehicle while they're driving, or the feeling that the vehicle is well made and durable, and the fact that it's responsive enough to avoid dangerous situations when they're driving. By actually going out in the field and seeing this stuff in action, our hazy assumption of who these people are gets a little bit bigger, and we're able to get a clearer idea of how the vehicle fits in these people's lives. But it's not just enough for the market research department to understand this, because at the end of the day, we're really not the ones who are making the decisions. It's the engineers and the designers and the people who would probably reject a lot of the findings if we were just to do this on our own. So the way that we get buy-in from people who are qualitative naysayers is to actually make them the market researchers themselves, which is a similar idea that we heard yesterday. So when we're doing these focus groups, we actually have our engineers and our designers on the floor actually putting in their own questions. We do coach them along and make sure that they're not leading the customer or anything like that, but they essentially become co-moderators or at least contributors to the discussion. They're the ones who are combing through the interview or the diaries and pulling out findings from there. And they're going along on the in-home interviews. And the reason why we do that is, first off, we just think people will retain more of this information. There's this whole benefit of this active engagement and learning. So if I were to just do this research on my own and present a report or just have people read it, they might only retain a little bit. Just as soon as I leave the room, they might forget most of what I just said. If I make it a little bit more interesting and have some visual stimuli for them to react to and make it a little bit more engaging, they might retain a little bit more. But by actually making it a hands-on activity, long after this research fields, these decision makers are going to have this experience with them for a long time. And when those situations come up when they need to make a decision on something and there's no survey and there's no quant data to give them any kind of direction on what to do, they can call back to this experience of interacting with the customers and use that as at least something to back up their rationale for the decision that they're making. So like I highlighted before, we have our engineers and our designers and representatives from marketing and product planning and corporate strategy all show up to these events, and they're going through the diaries, they're pulling out their own findings, they're involved in every aspect of the research. And after all is said and done, our debrief ends up turning into a collaborative writing experience where everyone's presenting their own findings, and there's a lot of pushback, people challenging someone's thoughts or what they think they learned if it runs counter to what they thought they got out of this experience. And that back and forth happens until we settle on a core set of findings that we got out of this report. So our final report is actually co-written by representatives from every department that we're serving. And that makes it a lot harder to try to poke holes in later on, because how can a designer say another designer doesn't know what the hell they're talking about? And I'm going to highlight just kind of how this works in this video.
Over 4 days, the Compact SUV team had the chance to understand their target customers' needs, motivations, and lifestyle through direct interaction with market researchers, respondent journals, and the customers themselves. Using these sources, the team gained a deeper understanding of the customer and their opinions on luxury, craftsmanship, and brands. The team then shared their findings, which are part of this report.
Animal references include a lot of felines, so cats being very powerful, very graceful, very agile. And then on the other hand of the animal world, we had like water buffalo, elephants, which represented a lot of strength, kind of like it will always get to where it's going, kind of plodding, methodical.
What we did was basically take every one of these verbatims and we broke it down into these clusters. We clustered them kind of together. We expanded a couple of the categories to kind of put them into a homogeneous group. And amongst the clusters, then we kind of said, okay, there's a little bit inside craftsmanship that is both how it's made and then what the result is. And what you see here is kind of the bundle that is how it's made has to do more with precision and detail, investment of time and effort by the maker, and then the notion that it would be custom or handmade. And you bundle these, and this was kind of under the guise of artistry and mastery of the maker.
That last guy who spoke, shortly after this study took place, he actually got transferred into the market research department and is now a manager in our group. So when we say that we convert people into market researchers, sometimes we really do convert them into market researchers. And that just goes to show what a powerful experience this can really be for people. There's been times when I've been presenting and people who weren't involved in this research, they hear something that runs counter to their intuition. A lot of people that are in the automotive industry are there because they're car geeks and they love the products that they make, and a lot of these products are their babies. So if the customer's making claims that kind of go against what these people want to do with their cars, sometimes you get a lot of pushback on some of the findings that you have. And a lot of times I don't even need to defend my own report. I have people who pop up out of the audience and will defend it for me. So that's actually a cool experience. And since I move around, the way the General Motors is laid out, I'm not with one team all the time. I'm kind of floating between different groups. And sometimes I'm in meetings and people don't even realize I'm the market researcher there. And I'll hear debates going on, and you'll hear people cite their experiences from studies like this in their debates. So you can kind of see like, oh, they're actually taking this seriously and they are using this to make their decisions with, which is a really cool experience. And when that kind of thing happens, it's not just the view that market research has on who the customer is. Throughout the entire company, this vision of who these people are really comes to life and is vibrant, and people remember it for a long time. And that's really the goal of this whole TCI process. So thank you.